Okay, welcome everyone to our lunch meeting, and thank you for coming today. And we have another one tomorrow at lunch. Let your friends know, and then we meet this afternoon here, and then at the PAC at Utley Middle School tomorrow night. So please come. I think I know everybody here. I'm Dr. Virial, Superintendent of Schools, and we are going through a strategic planning process. Why are we doing that? Well, if you don't know, our strategic planning process, the actual plan itself ended in 2015. And as we continue to grow, as you know, at a rate of about 3%, just over 3% a year, we need some guidance as we move forward. And we're going to develop that strategic plan by meeting with you 4 times with the community. We have specified groups that'll meet this week, such as principals and teachers and things of that nature. We have a group of 40 people that are going to meet for 2 straight days, and they're going to take in this information and then at some point design some outcomes on strategies and objectives for the future. And then we'll put that together in the spring for our board after some action teams get together and go through those things that we've talked about this fall for a board-approved recommendation in the late spring. So kids are important to us. Excellence, we demand excellence in our community. Our new folks that are moving to us demand excellence, and we want to make sure we're delivering that. Sometimes we feel like we are, but it's always good to hear a perspective from all of you. So I will sit at the back. I won't take your names on whatever you say, but please feel free to give us some ideas as we move forward in the strategic planning process. I do want to recognize and thank our trustees here. Lee Plegans is here today, and Russ Childers over here. And then we have a facilitator that we're working with. And please welcome Mitzi Richardson.
I'm super excited to be here in Rockwall with you guys this afternoon. I'm really glad there's a great intimate crowd, and so as we start to really focus on really setting our sights on the children of Rockwall, it's really important to get input. And so as we go through this process, I'm going to be your facilitator, which is great because I get to hear all the wonderful things that are happening and all of your ideas that you have ready to share with the district. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here and to kind of partner with us. I actually work for a company called Engage to Learn, and one of the things that we pride ourselves on is because every single person that works in this company is a Texas educator. So I was in education, working for a traditional school district for 17 years. So I'm not far removed from being a teacher in the classroom or an instructional specialist. So I'm passionate about being able to ensure, when we partner with different school districts, that we're really focusing on children, and also that we're focusing on what the community wants, which is why your input is so valuable here today. So we're going to really talk about how we partner with districts. So one of the things that we really enjoy doing is really being able to highlight some of the amazing things that are already happening in Rockwall, and then again, setting our sights forward. What does that look like for the next 5-10 years? And so we're excited to be able to do that with you here today. We really focus on a local vision. So it's not about what a district can do no matter where it's located. It's very specific to the Rockwall community. So what does it mean for students here, for children here, for your neighbors, for your church members, for anybody that is locally in this community? How can we help support that? And how do we define as a group what we want for students here? Okay? So we want to make sure that we engage our community staff and parents. So that is what you're doing here today. You're showing up on your lunch hour. So really being able to provide that input, your ideas, and so that we can really know what you feel like is the best route for Rockwall ISD to take. We want to ensure that we give the district direction, that we had this unique opportunity to really voice our ideas and share things that we really want to happen in Rockwall ISD. If we want to continue the great things that are already happening, we want to voice that. If we have different ideas that we want to share, like, have we thought of this? Have we thought of that? Your input is so valuable. That's why we're taking the time to really talk about it in this little 2-hour mini session that we have going on. We want to make sure that we help the district come up with this plan that Dr. V alluded to earlier, and that it's a community plan and not just a district plan that we constructed behind closed doors. So I really want to applaud the Board of Trustees. Thank you for being here today, and also for the superintendent, who really is very courageous in stepping out and asking for this community input. There's lots of times where districts do not do that. They don't reach out to the community and get that input. And so you're very lucky to be in a district where they really want and are seeking your input. So really quickly, we're going to be talking a lot during this session. I'm going to be, kind of giving you some foundation, but then we're going to be sharing with each other. So if you have a shoulder partner or somewhere that's close to you, I just want you to share with them, what are your expectations for today? Why did you give up your 2-hour time block of your lunch, okay, and are willing to come and share your input? So just a couple of minutes, just share with someone next to you why you thought it was important to come to the Community Summit today.
Okay. Why do you think it was important? I think
You don't want to join?
I'm the interpreter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No worries. Do you want to join or turn back around? It's your choice.
Both, or so I just wanted to hear what it is. Yeah, it is. I
Can't complain about it. Here in the district, I still have 2 more here in the district. And just so I currently have 1 at Keene and 1 still at Keene. So they came up from and just curious how Rockwall will still try to engage in education, even with the pressure of TEA, STAR, ELC, and teaching to the test versus teaching, the big picture. And I would think that's a hard balance, and just strategies of how they
All right. Let's think about, I just want to, if you guys would stand if you're a parent of a child that's in Rockwall ISD schools. If you're a parent, would you please stand? Let's give them a round of applause. Yay!
applause for having children.
Yes. Thank you. Actually, your applause is for the fact that we know there's so many other things you could be doing right now.
Let's hear it for grandparents.
But I'm not finished. I'm not finished. But there's so many other things you could be doing, so we just wanted to thank you for really taking the time out of your day to be here. So, what about my grandparents? Community members that may not have children in Rockwall ISD schools. Do we have any of those? Any community members? We already recognized our Board of Trustees. Thank you for being here. Any staff members, teachers, or district level staff? You guys will stand. Awesome. Thank you. It's great to come together. It's great to have these conversations with each other, and so we're really thankful that you have taken the time to be here with us. When we have kind of a jam-packed agenda, and the size of the crowd doesn't matter. We're going to still really engage in some really great conversation as we go through. There is some social media buzz we can create today, so using the hashtag #ILoveRockwallISD, you guys want to talk about things that are happening in the summit and share with your friends via Twitter or other social media, please feel free to do so. We're really going to be focusing on our students and our children in Rockwall ISD schools today when we're having these conversations. So that's going to be really exciting to really come through and see what all of our ideas are based on our children. So Dr. V alluded to a lot of the process that we go through. I'm going to do a quick overview of what this looks like. So we're in the engage stage of this process. So this is where we are really wanting to gain input from community members. We're doing that in 3 different ways. One is the community summits, which we're going to be holding 4. We also have focus groups on Wednesday and Thursday, where those are specific stakeholder groups that will come together and give similar input. And then we also are going to have a community survey in English and in Spanish that you can participate in. So just because you come to a summit doesn't mean that we don't want you to take the survey. It's not an either or, it's both. We would love for you to also participate in the survey and give a little bit more detailed information. So I'll put up the links to the survey as we close today's session. Our timeline. So our summits, survey, and focus groups are happening in November. We have our design and create plans will happen in November and January. And then, school bell. And then we'll really start to think about what is going to be our timeline for all this happening in February. And so then once the plan is actually designed with all the community input and with people on the design team, it also will then go before the Board of Trustees for approval. So all of that being said, we'll take all of that together and then we'll take it for final approval for the Board of Trustees. So our model in facilitating this process is that we want to be very transparent. That's why the summit's being videoed. The raw footage will be located on the website. We will also be sharing information that we get in our surveys through the design team, and so all of that will be very, very public. So we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to review the input, no matter if you were able to make a summit or not. We also want to make sure that our process is actionable. So instead of us spending all of this time coming up together with all these great ideas and great plan, there's nothing worse than having it sit on a shelf and not do anything with it. So part of our process is really taking it down into some action teams. And what does that look like? How are we going to time this out? How are we going to ensure that what the community says wants to happen actually comes to fruition in this process? Okay? Maybe it wants to change. Can we see if someone... Oh, perfect. Thank you. So we want to begin with the end in mind. We want to think about if we have children in schools, it's really easy for us to focus on what they're doing in their second grade classroom or in their fourth grade classroom. But really what we want to do is really we want to push it and think about what do we want for those kids in life. Okay, so not stopping in just the grade level or the classroom that they're currently in, but how do we really focus on how do we want them to be successful? What do we want for our kids? And what does that look like? So I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think about what is your highest hopes for your learners? And I want you to think about for your kids. So many of you stood that you were children, you had children in Rockwell schools, or you were a grandparent or community member, and you really thought about, yes, I want to come to this summit because I want to be able to voice what I want for my kids. And I want you to think about far in advance. So when you held that baby, whether it was your grandchild or your own child in your arms, and we looked down and we had all that hope in our hearts filled, and we just wanted the best for our children. What are those highest hopes? What did you want for your kids from the time that you were able to hold them in your arms for the first time? So I know that's a really lofty thought process. So I'll give you a non-example. So when you're holding that child, we look at them and go, man, I really want you to be able to pass that spelling test in second grade, right? We want more than that for our kids. Yes, we want them to be able to pass the spelling test, but we also have higher aspirations for our children, okay? So let's have some time to talk, and I'm going to put this next. What do you hope that the children will get out of their time in school? Students spend about 20,000 hours in school with us. We want to think about how many hours kids spend, right? They spend a ton of time in the thick of it with teachers, other students. So what do we want from that, okay? So let's talk about this with our little shoulder partners, okay? What do we want for their time in school, and what do you want from their time together, okay? So talk about that with your shoulder partners. Well, and some of you that are back here, you've got some shoulder partners, then maybe we could turn back and forth. Okay.
this won't be fixed in my lifetime, but it will be in Jason's. Or this is going to be. I'm going to get through it. But then, but seeing the picture for them, I guess, is for 11th grade, education was important. We all went to college. The last whole goal for us was 6 kids. Everybody got one degree, one way, one trip. Nobody got a car. Nobody got all that. That way I earned that. And that was what was important. And that became just continuing with our own family. Run that through that. And they were jobs. And they said all they can. But I came from a good family. What do you think about the kids who do not have jobs? And that's what I'm going to think about. I saw this thing on Facebook. There's a big one. If you could answer yes to the question,
You step closer, and it's an
tears in
example
my eyes.
of
I'm
what
looking at the
privilege
kids.
All right. So we have a couple of different ways that we're going to be capturing the input that we're receiving here today. So some of you, hopefully everyone, can I borrow this as an example? You have a comment card here that you can write on that we will collect as you exit, so we can make sure to capture all the information that you want to share with us. So that's one way that you can input or give us your input. The other way is that we have an electronic poll. So I'm going to talk to you about this. Some of you may be really comfortable texting in some responses. So if you want to, you can participate in the text poll, where you typically type someone's name in your texting. You would type in 22333, and in the text message body, you're going to type engage to learn. It does not have to be in all caps. So the 2 part is 22333, and then the text body, it'll say engage to learn.
So is that in place of this, like either write on this or do this?
You can do either one.
Okay.
Some people prefer to write, some people prefer to text. Some people start to text and then run out of time and end up writing. So we'll collect them both so that we can make sure that we get all the input that we can.
Or when you do the text, does everybody see? Because it says join the
It
group.
will.
Does everybody that
Yes.
is in that group
Yep.
sees your, okay.
So when you join, you'll get a response saying you've been added to Sheila's group. Sheila's the person in our company that sets it up for us. And then you'll notice on the next slide, when I switch it, here will be the poll, and it'll populate. I tested it out earlier today, so when I text something in, it'll be able to come up on the screen. So electronically, we're capturing this data as well, so that we can provide all of this information to the design team when they meet. This is all of the data that we got from community summits. This is all of the data we got from focus groups, so we can really take a look at that. So there's 2 different options, comment card and the electronic version of the text poll, okay?
Does it leave your name on the text?
Say it again.
Does it leave your my
It does
name?
not. No, it does not. Okay? So, if you want to text in your highest hopes for your children, we're going to do some share out really quickly so that we can kind of find out in the group what are your highest hopes for your children here in Rockwell ISD. So, is someone willing to share? All right.
Yes, my name is Ernie Burkett. Been around a long time in the Rockwell area. My wife, Becky, she and I were married in '83. Just put some perspective on it. She graduated from, I hope she won't mind saying, Rockwell High School in '77. So she's a long-time person. And I was blessed with her to get married in '83, and we've known each other since North Texas in 1980. Quite frankly, I want to make 2 points, and something I've never really had a chance to do. I'm not much of politicians. I'm just pretty much disgusted by politicians because I won't even go there. I think our country's in a really bad shape because there's just a whole lot of dishonest people. You know, they talk out of both sides of their mouth, and they're not serious about what they really, truly, fully believe in with all their heart, soul, mind, and spirit. And I think it's important for us to, as human beings, to know the good from the bad and be very careful. And only 2 things I have lots of things, believe me, but 2 things. I was an educator for 40 years, did all kinds of things. Thing I was most proud of, I spent a couple of years in West Africa, Sierra Leone, as an agriculture extension agent. And while I was there, I was very proud to do a second project and actually got a new school building built in my village. at the request of the President of the country. And because this happened to be his home port. Home port is where your mother was born. That's where his mother was born. But two things I want to say that are so important right now. This is a beautiful auditorium. Been in here several times. I love it. We spend billions of dollars, billions, parking lots, the whole 9 yards, for something so elaborate and so beautiful. But yet we go into the cafeteria and the food that our children are eating. I think this is pretty much. I mean, my son, I asked him, what'd you have for lunch today? And it's pretty much the same thing every day as a fried chicken sandwich. Ugh, you know, and I just, oh well. Or pizza. You know, how much extra would it cost? I mean, I see them in Dallas, you know, some of the poorest kids in this whole metro area eating fresh vegetables and just really looks like really good food because somehow or another somebody's gotten in there and gotten some government grants or something perhaps, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, and are eating fabulous food while, you know, so many times people are eating crap, if you excuse my French. Bleached flour. How many sandwiches have you ever seen that the main ingredient isn't bleached flour, when it should be at least unbleached flour, and there shouldn't be a bunch of corn syrup and sugar and we got to have oils, but it should be good oils, really good oils. We could eat like that if we choose to, and we choose to feed our children bad food. And you know, with computers, garbage in, garbage out. Well, you know, kind of the. I have a master's in education, but also LCDC. I'm retired now. Don't do none of it. Unfortunately, in Rockwell County, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But anyway, that's their point. As an LCDC, I'm most concerned about the fact that people use drugs for some reason, and sometimes in the process, it's the food they eat that are also the initiators of the bad behavior. I think good food going in for people will also yield out good results. Bad food, our body's all about chemicals and working chemicals, and bad food going in, I'm not going to just beat it up too much, but I would tend to say that bad food going in is certainly not going to help our kids anymore. I would love to see a good cafeteria, fresh vegetables, broccoli being the first thing. Unfortunately, you know, here many years ago, somebody was proud of it. I don't eat broccoli, one of our big, you know, polo toes. But, you know, the whole broccoli is good for you. It's great. It's one of the best things you can put in your body. And it should be fresh. But things like that. And the other thing, watch out, as an LCDC.
What is that?
People all over.
I don't know what LCDC is.
Oh, licensed chemical dependency counselor.
Thank you. I didn't know what that
I'm
was.
sorry. And I have licenses in Texas and other states. The other point about that, right now, I don't know what the number is. Every day people are dying from this opioid overdose. Mm-hmm. Thank God, as far as I can tell, and what I know, it hasn't hit this school yet. And hopefully it never will. But having been in the business there, I stayed with that for 4 or 5 years as a hardcore counselor. Counselor is my master's degree too, by the way. Man, you want to get your eyes open. Listen to some of the group therapy you get in a bunch of addicts. You won't believe some of the things they've done to get drugs. And I mean, I mean bad stuff. I mean really bad, about as bad as it gets. Mm-hmm. And like I say, I'm grateful that it seems that hasn't come to our area. I know it exists in the metro area. And I think it's a matter of time. If we don't do something about it, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any serious politicians willing to do much about it, but if we don't do something about it, kids, when they get a chance to take that stuff, and you know, something about 25% of people have a tendency to be an addict or an alcoholic. In other words, they take that first drink, they taste that first pill, and they're looking for the next one. I mean, just rough numbers here. Some people say it's only 15%. I'm not sure, but there's people that it's in our genetic code that they are going to be an addict or an alcoholic. want to drink too much beer, want to drink too much whiskey, want to do too many drugs. And anyway, what I'm saying is it seems that we need to really be aware of that it could be happening, and somewhere in the programs there are stop gaps to make sure that that does not happen. I've just hit the
Okay.
high
Yep.
top, but
Awesome. Thank
please,
you.
people, be aware of good food and no drugs.
Thank you. Do we want to share back here? Oh, okay. All right. So would someone like to share about what they are really thinking about their highest hopes for their children? So I love being healthy and really being aware of certain things that could impact our children. Would someone else like to share?
My son's a senior, so this is going out into the real world. It's all very right there in front of us now. And my hope is that he's ready, that he not only goes out into the world and does okay, but that he thrives. And I think he needs to know about the world and how the world works and questions everything and engages in it. That's what I want him to do.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Not just accepting everything as presented. I love that. Yes.
I'm a mother of 4, 6th grade to 3 years old. Sorry, he went into middle school this year, so 7th grade. For me, it's just I want him to have integrity when he leaves high school, and have a broad knowledge, not just what he's interested in. If he's interested in robotics, that's great, but I think he should also have a broad knowledge of arts and music and sports. If he's, the type of child to sit there and do art or whatever and have no interest in sports, he should still have a broad knowledge of it. Life skills, be able to go and hold a job, be able to have communication skills where he can come in and be able to hold a conversation and not get emotional with employers, be able to just work through his problems. And I think something that would be great for this whole community is mentors. Really have strong mentors that can either do courses or if there's something like outside of school, culinary arts, I think that would be really good.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So as we start to think about our highest hopes for our kids and really exposing our students to situations and opportunities where they can problem solve and have that perseverance, and that they also have exposure to what's happening, so that they are well-rounded. As I saw some highly engaged students, they want well-rounded children, because you never know what one exposure might do, and it might actually it'd be the one thing in life that they're so passionate about that had they not had that exposure, they may not know about that. So that's awesome. Yeah, this is our last one. I'll share. Oh yeah, you're fine.
I was just thinking of this morning, of how I wish I would have taken the history of our nation more seriously when I was learning it in school. I'm a mathematician, so history and English were kind of, my last subjects I'd get to. But I really think that our kids need to have active debates in what we're seeing, what they see every day and what they're exposed to, and what it looks like from a real history perspective on what this country was built on and what the founders did, everything about that. I mean, I don't know that we have that, and I think our kids are graduating and they're just not sure what this country's made of, so they don't know how to base their opinions.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right. So when we think about the purpose of education today, it really helps for us to think about looking in retrospect, like what was the purpose of education 100 years ago? And has that changed? Has the purpose of education changed from 100 years ago, from 150 years ago to what we have now in our current education system? So talk to your shoulder partner really quickly. Do you feel like the purpose of education has changed? I'm just going to give you about 2 minutes to share really quickly. Yes. The purpose of education has changed. How has it changed? It's going to be cut down.
Although, you know, we've got the Computer and Technology Center, and that's specifically what that's designed to do. Right. Because life is about things. I mean, you're gonna
So, as we start to think about what our purpose in education is, how has it changed? Is it the same? I'm going to show you this quick little, it's just a 3-minute video for you to think about. It kind of gives you some little visuals to help you think about the changes that have happened in the last 150 or so years.
Since the dawn of its existence, the purpose of public education has been fairly simple and straightforward. We want our kids to grow up to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. Even though our purpose in education has remained steadfast for over 150 years, a lot of things have changed. Remember the pioneer days? Well, probably not, but it looked something like this. During this time, people mostly lived in small rural communities and predominantly worked on family-owned and operated farms. So how did we educate and prepare children to function successfully in this environment? Well, unless you were rich enough to afford a private tutor, your children were educated in one of these, a one-room schoolhouse. Think about how well this matched the context of the day. School schedules matched the agrarian calendar, and students were educated in small, multi-age, cooperative learning groups. As students mastered the basics, they became apprentices, learning trades, crafts, the family business. We call this Education 1.0. Education imitated the lifestyle and work environment that people were engaged in at the time. But come the turn of the 20th century, society changed with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. In a very short amount of time, the living and work environment of our society quickly changed. People began to flock to major urban epicenters where jobs and commerce were widely available. New inventions and modes of transportation meant the rapid expansion of our economy. No longer were people working in fields and family trades, but instead in manufacturing plants and assembly lines. So what did we do to prepare young people to meet the needs of the day? We created an industrial model of schooling. Education 2.0. If most people worked in this environment, then it made sense that we teach them in this one. In order for students to be successful in the industrial age, they needed to learn how to master repetitive tasks and how to do solitary work in a group setting. They needed to learn how to work in allotted segments of time and how to follow instructions from a manager who valued the quantity of work produced. It was an efficient model that perfectly met the needs of society. Everyone was expected to learn in the same place, at the same time, at the same rate, and in the same way. Today we find ourselves in a time very different than the days of the Industrial Revolution. The context of society, and in turn education, has rapidly changed. Most of us don't work in factories or on assembly lines, and yet our classrooms still look like this. Things are changing, and changing fast. Technology is advancing so fast that in just a few short years from now, we'll probably be laughing about how archaic smartphones were, the same way that we laugh about 8-track players and VCRs. There is little about our world that resembles the world of Education 2.0, and as great as technological advances are, it may not be enough to put a laptop or tablet in front of every student and continue to teach them as if we were preparing them for an assembly line. After all, a vast majority of employers surveyed identified collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking as very important skills. Unfortunately, only about 1/4 of job seekers were rated as excellent in the skills employers believe are most important. Perhaps it's time we ask ourselves if Education 2.0 still prepares young people to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. The context of our society is rapidly changing, but the purpose of education remains the same as it's always been. Today, our job is to educate young people to be successful in the 21st century, because it may not be too long from now that your morning commute looks more like this. There's a vast world of possibilities for young people today, and if we want them to be equipped with the skills necessary to be successful in Life 3.0, then it's probably time that we start talking about Education 3.0.
How many of you have more than one child at home? In school, or both? You have more than one child, period, wherever they are located currently. And keep your hands raised if they learn in the exact same way. Okay? So when we think about educating our students and thinking about our kids, we know you can tell differences very, very early on with your own children. So we also want to honor, can you get it to the next, I think it'll, just advance it just a couple of times. We really want to think about how does that mirror, how can we ensure that no matter what child I send to school, that they're going to be educated in the way that best fits them, right? So how do we really think about education in that way, and so that it's customized for them, so that each student has the experience that they want in their classroom, and that we're really catering and preparing them for basically what we don't know exists yet. So that's sort of the interesting part of the day and time in which we live. So let's just popcorn out. What is some technology that kids have available to them now that we didn't have access to?
Pretty much everything.
Like?
Cell phones.
Cell phones, and even like the smart ones, right? Might have had flip phones back then, some computers. What else? Tablets. Google Classroom. Whiteboards, love it. Right? So there's a lot of things that children have access to that we did not have access to. It has really changed the game, if we want to think of it in that way, because there's different ways for students to connect that they didn't have those ways before. So we have to think about, instead of doing the same exact thing, we have to think about how do we adjust what we're doing so that it does prepare, it does utilize some of the things that students are so used to having access to as they go through life, okay? So when we think about technology, it really has changed the world. We think about how we communicate, what's our entertainment like. I just think about the fact that I canceled my cable subscription this year because I no longer have to pay a cable company. I can stream it through my already smart TV that didn't exist 5 years ago. So much has changed the way we communicate, our entertainment, the way in which students interact with one another. So how do we think about supporting our students so that they are ready to go out into a world where this technology is prevalent? Okay? So when we think about the fact that technology has changed medicine, it has changed the way people interact in their jobs. Sometimes people don't even meet in an office and have meetings. They do it virtually through a Google Hangout or through Skype. So how are we preparing our students to exist in that world in addition to existing in our classrooms as well? Okay? So we're going to watch this quick little video about some CEOs and some of the things that they're looking for. Because ultimately we want to prepare our children to, yes, be successful in school and whatever path they choose after school, and we want them to be successful in life, in their career.
We need to get chief executives thinking for the long term, and there will be tremendous technological disruption in the next 10 years. we lived in the analog era for 500 years. We're only sort of 10 years into the digital era, and we're all learning about the digital era. Some industries have transformed or are transforming themselves quicker, others are slower. And lots of the FTSE 30 companies are in the slower box, and if they're not careful, they'll see others coming into the space or the voids they create by not being ambitious enough.
I think almost every part of Mirvac is changing, and every business should be constantly evolving. If you're not changing, you're not keeping pace with what's happening in the broader society and the expectations that people have of you. So we're changing in how we interact with our customers, we're changing in how we use technology, we're changing in how we use our own premises to drive our own business performance, we're changing in how we train and develop our people. So there's almost constant change throughout the business to try and strive for excellence and a better result for our customer all the time. So change is everywhere.
The major trend that all industries face, all people face, is a fairly straightforward. That's the impact of technology on every single aspect of a company, whether it's your operational effectiveness and efficiency and what you can do applying technology to traditionally manual processes, whether it's enhanced intelligence to help you think through problems differently, big data and analysis, whether it's in marketing, or whether it's in risk, or whether it's in product creation, or whether it's in assessment of ideas and stuff like that, or whether it's technology in terms of people using a smartphone to do things they used to do by walking in a branch in our case. And that untethered computing power, that ability to distribute information wholly different we have, is going to lead to sea changes in how companies are organized and run across all industries.
Our global chairman and CEO likes to say this I quote from him. He says, "One night I went to bed as the head of an industrial giant. The next morning I woke up as the head of a software and analytics company." So that is the way we live this transformation and prepare ourselves for a new purpose, innovating for a more connected world that will work more efficiently.
We've seen in the last few years industries that were totally revamped. You've seen the music industry, you've seen the travel industry have changed totally, and I think that the banking sector is next in line.
We have a very strong corporate culture here, and it is very much centered around being a responsible owner, being a responsible employer, and having a role in society, as well as, of course, creating profitable companies and making money from that. So I think for us it comes pretty naturally, but I think also looking into the future, it's something that will be required more and more by new generations coming into the workforce. So I think it's also a competitive edge to have in the coming 10 to 20 years.
Companies have to change dramatically their organization structure and their culture. They have to be designed around speed. They have to be designed around speed of innovation.
We got to iterate, we got to experiment, we got to fail, we got to learn, we got to reiterate, relaunch, and we have to keep doing that. But it has to be done in the context and lens of a broader goal for the organization in the near term. Otherwise, people won't know in which direction should they innovate, or if they are innovating, why are they innovating? The end goal must be very clear as well.
So I think that we can all agree that technology has changed the way in which we interact and the way that we do things. I remember the first time that I was able to take a picture of a check and deposit it into my bank account, I thought my whole world had changed. I was like, this is the best thing ever. I don't even have to walk in and do that. I can just take a little picture and it's automatically deposited into my account. And how amazing is that? And so as we start to think about how technology has now impacted education, we must consider that it has, and what are we doing to support that, okay? So I want you to take a look at this picture and tell me, just popcorn out, what type of company do you think this is? Information? Trading stocks?
Something about weather.
Something about weather. One more guess? Utilities. This is actually a trucking company. Okay, so what's interesting about this picture is that, yes, they're monitoring the weather, which was a really great, you definitely picked that out, but it is about how that this company can save money by being able to avoid certain things that might impact their truck driving, so they can be more efficient and get things to where they need to go. I shop online quite a bit, and I get notifications sometimes that says, due to weather in this city, your package may or may not be delayed. And what does that do? It tells me as a customer, I'm not going to be as mad if my package is a day or two late, right? So they're using technology to really make sure that the customer, myself, is satisfied and that they're being more efficient in what they're doing. So how do we apply that to education? So when we think about how technology has changed careers, here's some stats for you. The average graduate today will change jobs 15 to 20 times, less than every 3 years. And that's not something that, when I grew up, it was, we have this job, we're going to stick with it, and that's going to show our loyalty, and that's the arena we're going to stay in. And so when we're thinking about that, we want to think about how are we preparing kids to be resilient and flexible and learn how to work with their peers quickly, because that's what we're going to demand, okay? 27.5% college graduates working in their job related to their major. And 72% of high school graduates plan to be entrepreneurs, which I think is fascinating, right? That is even, what, say it again?
I wish they had a follow-up to that of this is the percentage that actually were.
Yeah. So there's a lot that we have to think about. How do we begin to prepare someone to be said entrepreneur? How do they have the skills to be able to do that? Look at these jobs created in the last 5 years. My favorite is job number 1, video game tester. My nephew probably would jump all over that. So when we're thinking about these jobs didn't exist whenever we were growing up, or maybe we weren't even allowed to dream that it was possible. So we have to think, how are we preparing our students and our children to be successful in a job that we don't even know exists, okay? So this is your next question that I want you to think about. In the context of the 21st century, what are the most important skills for learners or for children to possess so that they're going to thrive? So here I'm talking about actual skills that students would possess so that they could thrive no matter what situation that they were involved in for their career or future, okay? So remember that you can text in to 22333. Okay, so what is, in the context of the 21st century, what skills do we want students to have so that they're able to thrive? Talk about that with your shoulder partners.
Oh, that one? Yeah. I do. She does.
Oops, sorry. Say it again.
How about we do more integrated learning instead of specific worksheet. And you bring all of it together.
Okay, you have to text engage to learn first to join the group.
Oh, okay.
But let me help you. I can do it real quick if you don't mind.
I think that's my other one. They need compassion and like to help each else.
Then it says you join the group, and now you can text in your response. Do you feel like them speaking, they can be heard by the video, or do you think they need that? I think they need like, yeah.
will take the curriculum, you're gonna have no student that will, he didn't want to do it. He wants to do it himself, design, get it right. So,
You know, the teachers being graded these days and judged these days and how well their students do on the test, you know, that really says how we're trying to keep teachers successful in
well, and we used to put a test and everybody, special ed, separate and stuff. On stage, different people and stuff. But yeah, it's all one job.
She's not a good blower. She don't have to miss.
Common sense.
That's what we're saying. This guy, if you don't have the high school skills of being on time, respect.
Yeah, no, those are valuable,
to do all
absolutely.
this, then you're
It doesn't matter all the technology skills if you don't have some of those life skills, right? Great
I was
point.
hearing the thing about how kids are on their computers so much. They're not getting their driver's license. They're more safe because they're at home just on their computer. And it's like,
How do we have a balance of that?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, perfect. I think that's great. And feel free to share as we. So we're going to come back together. I'm hearing some great conversation about what are some of the skills that children need to possess to be able to thrive in the 21st century. So what were some ideas? Who would like to share whole group so we can all hear your fabulous thoughts? Dun, dun, dun. Thank you.
So all this technology that is, I mean, it is such a dizzying pace at what it's, and we're all marveling at it, and our kids are getting, I mean, they can just tell you how to do this, that, and the other thing, and you're like trying to catch up and do some of this stuff. But yet they're so absorbed in this, they quickly get drawn into it. They also need all those social skills, having manners and respect. And because we are such a global world, I mean, that started a long time ago, we have to respect other cultures and learn about them in order to deal successfully with them. We were talking about people going to meetings in their bathrobes on their computer and stuff, but, you know, just all the, you know, the care of how you present yourself, manners, getting to know other people, and realizing the importance of that. So we're talking about balance.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that. So we have to prepare our students to be able to function in that technology-filled world, but we also need to have that balance of how do they interact human to human, which is one of the things that I saw. You know, and have a balance between the two. Know how to do it, but also don't forget or not ever learn how to have that interaction face-to-face with people, because that is definitely an essential skill to surviving in the real world, right? What are some other thoughts you guys have? You guys would like to share? Some skills that kids need to possess.
We said technology as well.
Technology, okay, yep.
Well, communication was the big one. Being able to work in a group. Long-term, for me, I put down long-term goals, follow through, and work ethic. Being responsible, and having the ambition to finish the project.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the biggest one that I'm hung up on is the communication skills, because there's so many kids out there that just can't connect to their teacher or another person.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So communication skills, huge. And I would venture out to say there's several different types of communication, right? We no longer can just rely on face-to-face. We no longer can just rely on technology. But how do we change our communication style based upon the type of communication we're engaged in? That's another skill in itself, right? Any other skills you guys want to share about skills that kids need to possess to thrive? All right. Do our last one right here.
I was just going to say, I think they need self-confidence.
Awesome. Yeah. Self-confidence. Yep. Yes, you may.
They also have to understand that it's not just all about them. There's other people that they, well, I mean,
no, yes, that is
you know,
so valid.
that there's other people that they have to consider in the decisions that they make. in whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship or an academic relationship.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. Great points. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I appreciate that. This is a great little comic that I absolutely love. So it says, I attended an elite college that costs $50,000 a year. And the person hiring says, unfortunately, we're looking with people with good judgment, right? He may or may not be talking to me in this comic. But there are skills that we need to thrive. There are definitely ones that we need to cultivate. And I've heard a lot of that coming out of your small group conversations. When we think about what employers want or what colleges want, these are some thought leaders that have really started to think about, how do we prepare kids for our future? The reason we show this slide is some of you might get really interested in seeing what's out there and wanting to read more up on it. So these are some great authors that have really done a lot of research about what we need to do to prepare students for their future, okay? So if we take a look at, Tony Wagner has 7 survival skills that he focuses on. Look at number 1, adaptability. Being able to know how to adapt and in what situations that adaptation needs to happen. Okay? There's critical thinking and problem solving. Some of the same things you guys were texting in that I was seeing on the screen or overhearing in your small group conversations. Look at that, number 4, effective oral and written communication. So those are all things that people are seeking out of our graduates. So wouldn't it be great if we start to cultivate that within our students in their time in our schools here in Rockwall, okay? Top 10 skills employers most want, the ability to work in a team, okay? So we're gonna have to be able to collaborate with one another, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes virtually. How do we problem solve together and consider other people, right? So when we're thinking about employers and what they're seeking out, we need to pay attention to that because the employer, what they're doing may change, but the employers stay the same, right? So people that are wanting to hire our graduates or let our kids into their colleges, they're looking for some of these traits. No longer is it just that you have to have the highest GPA, it's also how do you interact with people? How do you do that community service? So there's a lot of different things that need to be considered as well. Again, here's another attributes employers seek. Leadership and ability to work in a team are the top ones. So if we think about the top employers in DFW, there's a lot that's available to us here. I live right down the road in the Colony, and so even just driving here, I was passing so many different employers as I drove in this morning. And so we have to think the job market, there's so much available out there, and we want to make sure that we're preparing our kids to be that top candidate, not to be a candidate. We want to, how do we ensure that Rockwall ISD students are the top candidate because of their time spent in our school district, right? So how do we already amplify the amazing things that are happening here right now? Okay. Here's some other jobs that are available. Jobs look different these days than they have in the past. It doesn't mean they're not doing the same thing. Some assembly lines are still happening, but they do so with a technical spin. Some things that were done by a person are more automated these days. So we have to think about how do we teach our students to be able to navigate that. Okay? This is one of my favorite quotes, and it's by the Senior Vice President of HR in the Boeing Corporation. And he says, there's not one specific thing or skill people have to work for us. But I can tell you why we fire people. Their soft skills. The ability to interact and communicate with others or behave ethically and take responsibility for things tends to be where people break down. So the way I simplify it is you don't get hired on your soft skills, but you can get fired on your soft skills or lack thereof, right? So how do we make sure that our students have those soft skills, those skills that help them become future ready? So here's a little graphic that talks, has a little girl on the screen, and she's got all these ideas in her head about what school is going to look like. And sometimes her idea of things that she wants to be exposed to or wants to work on doesn't necessarily match what happens inside the classroom. Okay? So we want to think about how do we change so that the perception is the reality, okay, instead of versus the reality. Sorry. So what consistent behaviors do children need to be engaged in if we want those skills that we just talked about? What types of behaviors do children need to be involved in their time in school with us, okay, to be prepared for their future and cultivate some of those skills that we just talked about? So talk to your shoulder partner or turn around, invite someone new into the conversation. What behaviors do kids need to be involved in school so we're preparing them for their future? Let's share. I definitely want to share a comment. because someone had to leave really quickly, but she had a really great comment that I wanted to share. She talked about the need for students to be able to work in groups, but instead of just saying, let's work in groups, how do we prepare kids to know how to work in a group, how to have shared responsibility, so that not one person just does it all, or they kind of look around and no one knows what's happening. So how do we really think about, so the behavior was, yes, it's valuable for students to be in groups and know, have the opportunity to collaborate and work as a team, but also the need to have that actually be taught to them. What does that look like? How do we function within a group? So I thought that was a pretty valid comment. Would someone else like to share their idea? Okay. Oops, sorry.
Hi, I have 3 children. My oldest is a freshman at university, and then I have a 10th grader here and an 8th grader, all different learners. My oldest just took the Highlands Abilities Test. There are many different ones out there, but they are very extensive aptitude testing that really help you figure out how you're wired, and if you have the aptitude to take or to be in the major you're in, or give suggestions. And that testing on some level, I think, will be so helpful to our younger learners to know how they're wired. It would maybe decrease some frustration, help them to, we all know people that went to college and either they flunked out or they changed their major. They took 7 years for a 4-year degree. And anyway, the guy that tested, Jonathan, that was his comment, was he wanted his kids to get out in 4 years. And his oldest got out in 7 with a 4-year degree, and his second 2 did much better. So I just think that knowing some of those characteristics can help you. They can really save you a lot of pain and heartache in your education if you know you have the aptitude to be a professional percussionist or you don't, or you can be an engineer, or you need to be in business, that kind of thing. So it's been helpful to him. In fact, he just called us last night and had a major change. He's in engineering, but he had a slight change within his degree of engineering. And I think that's, of course, he's a first semester freshman, so that's going to happen some. But I think if he, it just would be helpful. So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Early and often football testing.
Yeah. All right.
I was thinking about the question in terms of being prepared for the future, and future ready came to mind. One thing that we do at the company that I work with, we experimented with this past summer, was a teacher externship. And basically we took a teacher on campus to do a paid internship for 4 weeks to learn how do we work in agile pods, how do we work in groups, what is agile, so that she can transfer that knowledge over to her students. We also take the local CEOs from the different corporations and meet with them on a regular basis to say, hey, well, what is it that you need to, what are you looking for in these future candidates, so that we can feed that information into our schools.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Hey, what are some other behaviors that students should be involved in their time in school with us? Anyone else like to share? Someone that we haven't heard from, maybe? Oh, no. Well, you shared, but you shared quickly the first time.
A big one for me, I have 2 college students right now and 3 in the district, is natural consequences. And it is painful, but it has to happen. And if it doesn't happen early, it gets worse. And the consequences are more grave. So what I mean by simple example, your student doesn't turn their assignment in, then they don't get credit. They don't get to turn it in later and still get credit, because that takes away from the students that did turn it in. And it is hard when you're the mom or dad of those students that are not turning their assignments in and they get a C. But a C in high school is better than a C in college. And also, what are you teaching them in life? If they keep getting to go back and not learn responsibility, that does manifest itself in life skills. So that would be my biggest thing, natural consequences.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Would anyone else like to share about the behaviors the kids should be? Okay, the last one real quick.
I speak, I'm an educator, I know how to speak loud. So
just that last comment, that's really good. I would like to also add, though, that it levels of different, maybe, I mean, I think you gotta give kids a second chance, you know, because there's extenuating circumstances outside just the fact that they were too lazy to do it. And you have to, you know, there needs to be opportunity. Sure, they won't come back and get the same grades that other people may have gotten for having gotten it turned in on time. But the difference between a 50 and a 0 is big. And I think the district uses that concept quite a bit, that okay, you get a 50, that's the highest grade you can get. And instead of getting a 0, because a 0 can destroy your grade point average, if you will. And once students get destroyed, it's hard, especially for age group 10, 11, 12, up there, it's hard for them to get back up. They just give up. And kids that give up end out on the street and then.
I agree with you, but there needs to be a limit, because they're going to take that and be like, okay, well, I can just turn it in later, and I can just turn it in later. Like my 13-year-old is telling my 9-year-old that she didn't have to do her work that she was given when she went home early, because she had extra time to do it. So it really has to be leveled out.
And
So,
it's not a 50, they get an 85, a 75. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's like
when they redo it. Unbelievable. So,
70 is the best I've ever seen.
so as we start to think about this, so what I'm hearing is that definitely there needs to be some accountability, but also we also have to have some consideration, and that we also want to think about to what levels do we need to have that consideration. So that's kind of the message that I'm hearing.
So I guess, well, I don't know if I talk loud enough or not. So I'm agreeing with the no redo thing, but my problem is if the child gets a bad grade, they still need to be taught. I mean, they still need to know the stuff just because they got a bad grade, and then they do need to be retested, and then I don't know, I mean, I'm a little conflicted on how you use that grade, but they need to know it.
Right.
So you can't just say, oh, you got a bad grade, see ya.
Yeah. So I think it's important and for us to really consider too our jobs as educators, and I'm speaking as one, it's to ensure learning, right? We want to ensure learning. Whether or not that the paper was turned in late, we want to ensure that our students have gotten the concept. So I think we can all agree upon that that's our role. So we have to figure out, and we won't get into and decide all those things here in that summit, but definitely I love hearing the concerns about some of those issues. So as we go to design team, we can really start to think about how that might impact some of the things we do in the future, okay? So let's head over. So when we think about students being engaged in some of these different opportunities to, whether it's to work in groups or to have that grit and really kind of work towards something and not give up, to learn some of those boundaries as far as being able to get things done on time and learn those communication skills. What's the role of the teacher in that process? So that's what I want you to talk about next with your peers. So as you're sitting together and talking, what is the role of the teacher to kind of ensure that, number one, students are involved in such behavior and that those skills are being cultivated for those students? So talk about the role of the teacher, okay? She's so cute. Yes. I was just walking by her and she was like this little angelic. Yeah. Sure. What are your thoughts? Perfect. I love that some of you are using the text poll. I see other people are writing down in your comment cards. So
you got a good one. Look at this.
we want to make sure that we're capturing all this data so that we can really inform the design team well about some of the ideas you guys have. So let's think about the role of the teacher in this process. So if we know that we have certain skills we want our students to possess to be able to thrive, there's certain behaviors that we want them involved in. Teachers already do miraculous things in their classrooms. I think we can all agree to that. They would stand on their head if that meant that a student was going to get the information. So how is the role of the teacher in ensuring those behaviors and ensuring those skills are developed? What are some ideas? I've gotten some good ones here.
You never texted that, yay.
What is the role of the teacher in this process? What are skills that teachers should possess?
You can sure model the skills you want them to have.
Oh, I mean,
I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to say anything. I'm sorry.
Yes,
No.
you can share.
No.
That's true.
I would love for you to say that out loud.
Say it out loud. We were supposed to talk. I
Yes, you
forgot.
can too, Tom.
If the teacher models what they expect, if they get, instead of just reading the page, they pick out a word and say, oh, what does that mean to you and how can we use that? I mean, get something out of it. Get something.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. So modeling the behavior that they want the students to be involved in and the skills that they want students to develop. That's great.
Trying to get the kids to think for themselves versus telling them how they should think.
Awesome. Yeah. So putting them in situations and where the students are learning to think for themselves instead of telling them what to think. So, spoon feeding that information to them. Did you want to share? No, you don't mind passing that. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, I'm a mom of 3. I've got 2 in college and a 4th grader. And my 4th grader is now moving to Rockwall ISD. We've been in Allen now for many years. And one of the things that we've struggled with, he has ADHD. That alone is hard for any teacher. But one of the things that we struggled with is finding the right teacher for him that will take the time to kind of understand how he needs to learn. Granted, that's hard when you've got 20-something kids in the classroom. That's hard. But one of the biggest things that the teachers need to have is patience and understanding and compassion. And we had an incident last year. Just where there wasn't a lot of patience and understanding, and it made him kind of a little more reserved, where he didn't want to raise his hand and things like that. So I think you have to look at all the different types of learners that you have in the classroom and kind of adapt your style to that.
Yes, I completely agree. That's awesome. Yeah, so having that patience, being able to adapt and service all the students in your classroom is definitely the role of the teacher in this process. Do you want to share?
I like that video you showed earlier of the school with the businesses and how learning is aligned with the way that corporations are. So I would want to ask ourselves, are we still doing that? Are we aligned with our teaching with the way our businesses are doing things? Yeah, and then also partnership. I think it's critical for our teachers to know, hey, when Billy comes into class, here's our end goal. What are his interests? How can I partner with him? How can I hold him accountable? I think those are good. And then also deep thinking.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. All right. So as we start to think up, this is great. If Rip Van Winkle woke up today, the only place he would recognize is school. Okay? So school is something that universally we can typically pick out. I definitely think some things are adjusting and we're making strides to ensure that our classrooms are preparing our students for the future. We want to make sure that we're preparing them for the future and not a past century, right? That we are really thinking about how do we not just prepare a student for a career, but for any career, right? Or any college, or any post-secondary route that they would like to take. Maybe it isn't that 4-year school. Maybe everybody has the opportunity to do that, but maybe my interests take me a different route. And how do I know that I'm prepared for that as a child, okay? So we want to be able to prepare them for the future and not just our present. So what are some changes to the systems? And so this is a hard question, because if we really start to think about education, there's a lot of things that have sort of been set in stone because we've always done it that way. So it talks about here, what are changes to the time or schedule? And this is not a blank check or an ultimate wish list. It's just having you guys think through what are some things that might, if adjusted, might benefit how we're preparing our students, what might be out there. So programs or courses, what would learning environments look like? And what are curriculum or assessments, how things might be adjusted. So when you start to think about what are some changes to the systems that might need to occur so that the teacher does have that role, that we can ensure those behaviors and we can cultivate those skills. So let's talk about that. What are some changes to the systems that we might need to make to prepare students for a future that we don't really know exists yet? Okay? So talk to your neighbor about that. What are some changes to the systems that might need to take place? Where your comment should go?
Once a learner hits 16 years old, I don't think they should be in the same environment that a fifth grader is in. And I sort of feel like there's this delinquent policing that's taking place at the high school level that I don't understand. That I don't know if some kids need to be in another, I'm not sure, but to have them in a locked environment and then through the age of 18 and then to put them in complete freedom, there's no...
Yes, gradual release.
There's no... But how you get to that, I don't know.
But now they want to look at how do we restructure it. And I think that's how they do it. How do they become more mobile inside? How do we redesign it to fit the future?
And where's the research that shows this is going to work? Or who's doing research? People really busy because we're doing things for something that we know very little about the future.
Yeah, we're doing it because we need to.
And that's how you
You run a mile, you put out. Does he have a child? Like that's mine.
And I'm making all these bikes to school.
To somebody, it's costing somebody $50. Even though to do the free one, you can sign up.
But here's the thing too.
But I don't think this, the ACT and SAT, those organizations are never going to.
No, it's right about Princeton.
Hey, if you want to come to us, you got to take, you know.
But here's the thing too. Then they take the AP classes. They got to pay for that. I mean, that's the rule. You take it, you got to pay for the test. And then if they don't get a good enough grade, they've spent that money. I would like to, because I look at the grades at the front of the kids, and then I look at their.
All right, so let's talk about what are some possible changes to the system that might support that role of the teacher behaviors. And there's lots of hands that are excited about this question. I don't know if I should be excited or scared about that. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay, I have 3 children. 2 of them are in elementary, so that's going to be my focus of what I'm looking at. I think that they need to stop this crazy STAR testing prep, because what they're doing is they rush to get all this material in by a certain time date to prep for STAR. They take the STAR, and then they have a month of fluff, of doing nothing. So it stresses the kids out. It makes them extremely anxious. They are, trying to get this down. They do STAR, and then it's this huge letdown. And it's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't remember as a kid preparing for Iowa Basic Skills Test. You showed up at school, and you were like, oh, by the way, here's your Iowa Basic Skills Test. Because if you're teaching, like really teaching, you shouldn't have to do all this preparation. You should be able to take a snapshot of where they are in their learning, which is what we're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well said.
I'm done.
Well said.
Yeah. So I love that. One thing that really stood out to me, what she said is, if we're ensuring learning for all of our students, that test should be just a byproduct of that, right? Just a snapshot of where they are and they're learning in that process on that day. What other changes to the system or possible changes, so let me clarify that you think might be helpful to ensure that the teacher is able to live in that role and also cultivate those behaviors and skills in students?
I'm going to say more activity, smaller classes, and more connection of why the outcome is happening. Like if they touch a button on the computer, they should know the reason why that button is working, how the circuits and the programming and all that relates to what they're doing. And that goes for anything. I mean, with math, you learn the reason. But with all the other subjects, I think there just needs to be more connection and more involved connection. I don't know how to explain it.
Okay. Were you going to clarify?
So why does this work? Yeah, more of the why.
More of the why instead of just do this, do this, do this. More of the why behind it. So some reasoning so that kids understand. Yes. Here we go.
One thing that spoke to me in the video was, they talked about there being a classroom of kids and like one authoritative manager, because that's how factories work. I'm not really sure that I have the answers, but I'm really curious about the one teacher, one classroom of kids model. It seems like we're talking about people needing to be able to work together collaboratively and teachers needing to model that behavior or, model in themselves what they would want the kids to be able to do. It just seems like there's space to play there as far as, what, and the other piece of things, especially, I think high school and middle school is different, but especially for elementary school, there's a lot expected of teachers as far as they not only are they having to manage the behavior in their classroom, but they're having to facilitate learning. And then I also believe that they need to be working collaboratively with the parents in order to impact the kids. And And I'm not sure how one person can effectively do all of those things at 100%. And so it would be interesting to me to see how the classroom could change to maybe have multiple teachers working with one group of kids.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple other points. that
Sure.
made,
Do you want to speak? Or
Sure, yeah.
A couple other points were made about the planning of this school to be more college-based, but there was some resistance from the public. And then, you know, you've got the board, and what are teachers learning in college if teachers are still learning to do things the same way? I mean, how does this, it's a big picture.
Yes.
So how do
There's
you
lots of moving
affect all, get everything moving in a direction?
Yeah. And I think too, it's part of the reason why you're invited into participating in this process is that there are a lot of moving parts when you think about what systems are being effective, which ones maybe could use some tweaking, which ones maybe are not yielding the results that we want that originally did, but maybe are not doing so much anymore. How are we managing all the moving parts of inviting, collaboration with parents and other educators and all of those things? There's a lot of stuff that we know needs to happen, and how do we do that really effectively? How do we ensure all that's happening, right? So as we start to think about that, there's lots of things that we have to consider when we think about systems, because we want to make sure that when we think about certain systems that we are really analyzing how, the reason behind the system from the beginning, and is it still yielding those results? And is it still applicable to the day and time at which we're currently using those systems? Okay, we have time for one more.
I've been thinking a little bit more lately about the breaks that the kids have and how long some of them are. I mean, I know by the end of summer, a lot of the kids that I know are ready, like just chomping at the bit to go back to school, and regular jobs, if you will, are year-round. So they still need breaks. Obviously, they can't go to school year-round. But what if it was broken up into different segments so that you didn't have this huge break in the summer where, frankly, let's be honest, they don't do much to enhance their education during the summer. Even if we as parents are trying to.
You want that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Some great discussion on systems. Systems definitely is one of those more robust things to look at because it affects not just one aspect of a child's education. It touches every single aspect of it. So we have to really consider what we want to happen and how that's going to affect every single part of the education system here in Rockwall. So the next question that I want you guys to think about, and this is going to be our last collaborative discussion, but I'm going to provide some clarification for this. So before I ask you kind of what the role of the teacher was, but now I want you to think about it in a broader scale. If we're thinking about anybody that's employed in Rockwall ISD, anybody that comes into contact with our kids, that works at central office, that helps us with transportation, that helps do all of those things that need, all those moving parts that need to happen to ensure a successful day and year of school. What are some of the behaviors we want them to engage in so that we're just helping support the system as a whole? So I'm going to give you some examples. If we want our students to be problem solvers and to persevere through those trying situations, that also might be a behavior that staff might want to model as well, not just the role of the teacher. So before we focus really specifically on the teacher, but now we're going to think about any role in the district. So have some shoulder conversation about what behaviors, would anybody in the staff be involved in that we would want to help ensure that the children are involved in those behaviors and that we're cultivating those skills. Okay, so go ahead and talk with your shoulder partner.
This lady was teaching those lessons to kids all the wall. Every day to bring up.
Which he was given a card and said, put your name on this.
Don't forget, you can text in your answers to the text poll.
She's wonderful.
Everybody. She said, that was talk about teachers.
My bus driver has wanted to ensure we prepare children for their futures. What I'm thinking is. So you know. To then be able to prepare children. I want to bring it down a little bit. Yes. Taking that further on what. Sure that all the teachers will support.
Do you think that's what's threatened? That make those who are very poor. But I just think that you don't, the whole point of the kid, school is the kid. Yes. If you don't value a kid, you lost them. When you go into a benefit, they don't agree about 3 people before they get to where they're going. I know you're here. You might get upset, let me smile and say good morning if they happen to help you.
I'm going to ask, we're not going to share this one whole group in the interest of time, because it's what I'm going to be showing you next is actually hearing from the students in Rockwall ISD. So we definitely have some students that we want to hear from. And since we've been talking about these children, it's great to be able to hear some of their perspective and what they want for themselves. And so that they can be advocates for their peers and students that are going to come up through the ranks. So let's take a couple minutes to watch a short video about from the students in Rockwall.
All right, thanks guys for being here today. We have some questions here that we want to ask our students. As many of you know, Rockwall ISD values excellence in our district, and we want to continue to be innovative. But part of the voice, or most of the voice, needs to come from our external customers and our internal customers. And our internal customers and external customers are our students. So I'm glad to have them here with me today. So guys, I have a few questions for you. You guys kind of just jump in whenever you feel like you want to respond to a certain question. But this is about you and for you as the district plans the future, okay? So the first question is what are things that you find engaging about school?
Well, personally, I really think that when we do discussions in English, and it's a lot like we do Socratic seminars and we talk about the literature that we're reading and the teacher engages with us and we're all allowed to just like talk whenever we want to. I think that that's really engaging and really just broadens your mind on a lot of things, not just the book that you're reading.
Okay, all right.
One thing that I find engaging a lot in class is when we're doing hands-on activities. So like in physics, if we're doing labs, if we're making trebuchets or bridges, and we get to see real-world examples of the education we're learning in class, and we get to see how it works in real life. That's a lot. It's a great way for us to engage.
Okay. All right. Thank you. School. Okay. All right. Next question. How does school need to be changed to make those goals a reality, or describe what would be happening in the classroom every day if we made these goals a reality?
I feel like we need to make classes more real world applicable, because right now a lot of the stuff I do, I don't really see how some of it applies to the real world, or maybe I can, but maybe the teacher has a different view of that, and so I just want to be on the same page with my teachers on what this will help me with in the future, and not to mention be able to kind of narrow down my personal curriculum to what I feel like I'd be doing in the future and what I feel like my path is.
That's great. In what ways could our schools be updated to be more real world?
Again, with the hands-on activities, I think a lot more of a hands-on activities approach to learning can be really helpful. A lot of our science and math classes already do it, But I think emphasis on that. And then as well, I think more of a teamwork aspect could be included in our education. You know, like when you get into the real world, you're not going to be working by yourself. You're going to be working with a team of people, a team of engineers, a team of designers. And I think if we can have maybe more focused group learning as well as like individual learning, that way we'll be more prepared for the real world.
And I feel like having career classes like as your electives, so you know how we have all these electives and some people will say they're vague, some people will say they, perfectly fit them. I feel like if we had, certain classes for like the more mainstream careers, if we had classes, designed to get you ready for that and you treated that as such with not so much emphasis on making the good grade, but more emphasis on, getting ready for what you'll be doing in the future.
Practical.
I feel like those classes, more practical classes would help us in the long run.
Awesome.
I personally love the thought of block scheduling because when you're in college, you don't take 8 classes a day. You take 2, maybe 1, and some days you even get off. And it's kind of hard to get someone's attention span and to get a workload done in 45 minutes. And then you have to go to another class. And that also goes along with the test. You're like, well, I have 45 minutes to take this test, and I have a test after this. And you would just have days in between to kind of get your brain like relaxed.
More classes that apply to like real world. Like my parents were talking about when they were younger, they used to have like home education classes like baking and taking care of a family and doing balancing checkbooks and stuff like that. I don't feel like we'd have enough classes like that to help prepare us for what we're going to have to do in the future and the things that we need to help even like raise a family, what we need to do if we're on our own, because in college we were on our own too sometimes. So, and I don't feel like enough people know what they're doing in college, so I feel like they get stressed out and have too much stuff that they have to worry about. So I feel like if we had classes that help prepare us for that, that we'd have more success in the future.
Fair enough. All right.
I agree with that, that we should have more just general life education. But then I also think that if we learned in a way that made us just want to learn and not just get a good grade on a test, that I think that would be really helpful in the real world. Because in the real world, you're not going to like take an exam over like accounting or something like while you're an accountant. Like you're learning things like as you go. And I think that if we did that in school, then that would be helpful to prepare us for what's actually going to happen rather than just have a test and then forget everything that you learned on the test and study for the next one.
Okay. All right.
One thing that I think Heath is starting to really stress is getting an internship. And so I know that there's a lot of internships for like engineering and culinary arts and the medical fields. And I'm personally in an internship currently, and I think that the experience that I've learned from that is crucial for like what I'm going to do later in life. So I get to work with a team of engineers every single day and work on projects that are actually being introduced into the real world. So I think it's a super great experience.
How does technology integrate with your learning? How do you use technology to make your life easier when it comes to learning in school?
I personally think it goes along with the real world thing because now in college you don't get papers, everything's online, and so now whenever we have everything on Google Classroom or Google Docs, like it really just helps instead of like going through all these papers, and everything's super easy to access, and I love it. There's some things that we still want to do on paper, but I think it's more of a reality when you just go and look, okay, like this is my class and this is what I have to do.
Okay. All right.
I think nowadays, since so many people use technology, that it helps for people to organize their priorities. Because like back then, people used to have these big binders and stuff with all these folders and everything for all these papers. But I feel like now, since everything's online, that not as many teachers need to start printing stuff off as to just having us keep it on our phone and try to organize it into little files and stuff like that to help keep it into just one little phone or a laptop or something instead of having to carry around all these big books and all these binders and stuff like that.
So do you organize using your iPhone devices, or do you have your own personal laptops? How do you, what kind of technology are you talking about?
I personally use my laptop to help organize all my documents, and I think the biggest part here is the organization. Like, I'm able to keep track of all my documents, and if I need to pull up an old document that I used maybe like 3 years ago, I can easily do it. I can just pull it up on my laptop and I'm good to go. And I think that's really helped me stay on top of all my homework and my workload.
I prefer to organize myself, actually on paper. I'll like put my whole agenda on paper just because when it comes to my phone, I use my phone for Twitter, Snapchat, music. I get so distracted, I just forget to check the agenda on the phone. But when it comes to paper, it's solid, it's right there, I see it, I remember writing it down, that muscle memory of writing it down. And so I just feel like technology is good in some aspects, but it shouldn't be the only resource, the only, source you have to organize, to do your classwork, and everything like that.
Right, definitely agree with that.
There's actually, I don't know, hours of footage.
40 minutes.
40 minutes of footage that we had to kind of narrow down. I know that you want to see every single aspect of it, but we tried to narrow down some points so that you guys could hear directly from the students. We're going to be using other pieces of the footage during the design team so that they can get some additional perspective from the students and things that if they want and feel like that they need to be successful in life. But I always think it's great to hear, directly from the students' mouths to really think about what do they feel, how do they want to be supported, what are things that they find valuable. And so when we're really thinking about creating this strategic plan in Rockwall ISD, it's about the kids on the screen, right? Not just those 6 kids, but they represent the kids that we're talking about. And so it's going to be really important as we go forward to really keep that as a focus, right? So sometimes we are super passionate about one thing. We have to remember that when we're involved in this process, it's about how does this impact and benefit all the kids in Rockwall ISD. And so it's a super exciting time to really be able to focus on that. I want to go back to the process slide here. We are in the engage and collaborate stage as we're really trying to seek input. Please write down any last minute comments that you'd like to on your comment card. We will be taking those up as you guys exit. I then want to encourage you guys to participate. So there is an online survey. I'm going to actually pull it up at the end of the presentation. You guys could take it right now, so you don't even have to worry about it. Or if you want more time to think through some questions, you can take it. It'll also be located on the website to access there. The design team will come together. It's also great for you guys to share with your neighbors, your church members, your PTA groups, any way in which you're connected in the community, that you share, number one, about the summit, so you can invite other people to attend to share their ideas and thoughts. Also about the online survey, they can participate that way.
What are the dates for the online survey?
They are starting, there you go.
Oh, wow. Look at me. Okay.
The 6th through the 17th. So right before Thanksgiving break. Focus groups will be happening Wednesday and Thursday. The design team is a cross-section of all stakeholders within Rockwall ISD. They will be meeting November 29th and 30th. The create team will meet in January and the lead team will meet in February. So please share with anyone you're connected to about the process, your experience. Also feel free to use social media to share your experience today, because we want to make sure anybody and everybody has an opportunity to have a voice in this process. Again, I want to really commend the leadership here in Rockwall ISD for really extending the opportunity so that you do have a voice in this process, because I think it's so valuable and so essential as a community to have your voice to be heard. So here is the survey. So the English survey is on top, the Spanish link is on bottom. If you want to take a picture of it so you can take it later or access it through the Rockwall ISD website, will also be available there. So again, we thank you for devoting this time to share with us today, and we appreciate all of your input and commitment to the students here in Rockwall ISD.
Thank you for setting it up.
Yeah.